Most organizations want to be successful in their digital transformation, but most organizations also don't necessarily understand what success means to them. So what exactly does digital transformation success mean? That's what I want to talk about here today. My name is Eric Kimberly. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformation success. And most organizations we work with, not surprisingly, they don't want to fail. They want to be successful in their digital transformation. But when we dig in and really try to understand what a client means by success, oftentimes you get a very vague answer or a no answer at all. And the reason for that is because organizations oftentimes don't think about what success means. They don't think about what it is that they're going to use to declare victory or to determine success, or what is unacceptable, or what are the parameters that they know they don't want to achieve in terms of failure. So one of the key things that organizations need to do is have a clear vision of what success means to them as an organization as it relates to their digital transformation. So what I want to do today is talk about the 5 different dimensions and measures of success that you can use to ensure that you're successful in your project. And be sure to stick around for the last one, because that is the most important one that I've saved for last. Now, for more information and best practices on digital transformation success, I encourage you to read our annual digital transformation report. It's a report that features a number of best practices, lessons learned, and even independent software reviews and rankings to help you through your digital transformation. You can read that report by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you, or you can go to the links in the description field below. One of the most fundamental measures of success that organizations often define is on-time delivery. In other words, they want to go through their digital transformation within the time frame that they expect. Now, the problem here is that most organizations begin with unrealistic expectations from the start. They set a timeline that was never realistic to begin with, and therefore they're probably not going to achieve that timeline, at least not in the scope, in the way that they imagined that they would. In addition to that, oftentimes even with a realistic timeline, organizations struggle to manage the project and ensure that they stay on track to complete the project on time. And why is that? Why do organizations have so much trouble even if they have a realistic implementation plan? Well, first of all, as I mentioned, it's because organizations oftentimes start with unrealistic expectations, so they have set a unattainable timeline. Second of all, organizations also struggle with doing things well at the beginning that are going to ensure that they can finish on time. So things like defining a clear future state vision for your organization, going through an implementation planning process that ensures that you are starting off on the right track, ensuring that you have a solid and effective change management strategy. Those are just a few examples of things that need to be done early on to give yourself a chance to deliver on time. So one of the first measures of success is to ensure that you have a realistic timeline and that you deliver to that timeline to ensure that your project is successful. Another measure of success that organizations often pursue is to finish the transformation on budget. In other words, don't spend more money than you've been allocated for the project. And just as is the case with implementation duration, organizations struggle to have a realistic budget to begin with. And this is often because software vendors tend to downplay the risks and costs associated with deploying their software, and so a lot of organizations just simply don't know what a realistic budget is going to look like. Another challenge is that organizations often struggle with the project management component of their delivery, and without that effective project management, the budget is going to run over, and you're going to spend a lot more money on the project than you might expect. So these are a couple of root causes for why organizations have struggled achieving this fundamental measure of success in terms of making sure that they implement within a reasonable budget. One of the things you can do to ensure that you avoid this common pitfall is to ensure that you not only have a realistic budget to begin with, but that you manage to that budget and that you ensure that you are incorporating project governance and controls to ensure that you don't spend too much money on the project. And to better understand implementation time and cost benchmarks that might help you set a realistic time frame and a realistic budget for your project, I encourage you to read our annual digital transformation report, which contains a number of benchmarks and best practices that might help give you some data points to lean on and to really validate some of the inputs you might be receiving from your software vendor or your implementation partner. The next measure of success that organizations often pursue is delivering in scope. In other words, they want to deliver process improvements and technological capabilities that they don't have today. And this is a really important one because the scope that you determine is ultimately going to determine your budget and your timeline, which are the first two measures of success that I talked about prior to this one. And obviously, with those three things being related, your scope, your budget, and your timeline, it's imperative that you assess and evaluate all three of them in parallel. And one word of caution here is that a lot of organizations try to boil the ocean and they try to bite off more than they can chew. Not because they want to, not because they're intentionally trying to bite off more than they can chew, but they think that it's going to be easier and cheaper and faster than what they realize. And part of this is because software vendors in their sales mode do a good job of convincing organizations that they should buy more of their software and deploy more of their software when that may or may not be the right answer for that organization, or at the very least, that may not be the right answer that can be achieved in any realistic time frame. So the key here is to be realistic and have a realistic measured plan for what your scope is, what the phasing is going to look like, and what the overall deployment strategy is going to look like. And one of the key challenges with scope is that oftentimes, in the interest of achieving a timeline or a budget, organizations will cut back on their scope. So one of the key takeaways here is to make sure that you find that right balance between having enough scope that you're being aggressive, you're delivering real value to the organization and real business improvements to the organization, but at the same time, you're not being so aggressive that you're just going to end up having to cut back that scope and under-deliver in the future. So this is where objectivity and having a realistic sanity check of your implementation plan and your budget and your scope is so important, and it's important that you do that early in the project before you commit the dollars and the resources and the time to moving forward with the project. Now, the next measure of success, which is more of a defensive measure, I would say, but is oftentimes not considered as an important factor by organizations, is to really minimize the operational disruption at the time of go live of new technologies. A lot of organizations don't think about that. What would that cost us if we couldn't ship product, for example, or if we couldn't close the books in any realistic time frame after period end close? Or what if we couldn't run payroll? What would that look like? What would that cost us? A lot of organizations don't quantify and understand what those risks are of that material operational disruption. And in their quest to finish a project on time, on budget, and in the scope that's been promised, organizations oftentimes will rush through the implementation and they end up in a situation where they haven't really thought about what the real long-term cost is going to be of trying to optimize your implementation time frame, your budget, and your overall scope. So it's really important that you really understand and measure what sorts of disruption are you willing to accept and what sorts of operational disruption are you not willing to accept. A lot of organizations, for example, are okay with the usual sorts of challenges and learning curve issues that come with new technologies. On day one of using new technologies in a live environment, you're just not going to be as productive as you were in your old environment. That's a normal part of the transition, and with the right change management and the right project activities, you can move your way through that pretty quickly. But what is more often than not acceptable is if the disruption is so extreme that we just can't ship product and that we're making our customers mad and we're having them jump ship to go to competitors, our employees are frustrated, there's a lot of chaos internally within the organization. That all costs us time and money as an organization, and we want to minimize that. So we really need to understand what those risks are, quantify those risks, and make sure that we do whatever we can to mitigate the risks that might lead to those sorts of disruptions. Now, the biggest and most important measure of success is also the one that most organizations fail to even think about. And that is, what is our long-term business value that we are going to deliver to the organization as a result of our digital transformation? Too often, organizations are stuck on such fundamental, basic reasons and justifications for going through a project that they don't think about what is the long-term business value and how can we optimize that long-term business value. For example, right now we're going through an awkward phase in the digital transformation space where a lot of ERP software vendors are really forcing migrations to new cloud solutions. And that may be the right answer for organizations in the long term. I'm not doubting that. But what I am doubting is whether or not that's enough of a reason and a justification to go through a digital transformation. In other words, you need a lot more justification than just you have to go through the transformation. You need to be going a step further to define what the business value is, what that expected value is, and ultimately defining a benefits realization plan of how you're going to get there. How are we going to deliver the business value we expect to get out of the organization, and how does our overall digital transformation plan and strategy align with that? Now, the beauty of this underrated measure of success, this long-term business value measure of success, is that not only does it optimize long-term value, but it also helps you in the shorter term during the transformation itself. It gives you a good project governance tool to help you make decisions as you make a plethora and variety of decisions along the way. Your definition of what business value is and where you expect to get business value is going to help you make decisions around scope, around process improvements, around potential customization of software or potential integration to third parties or potential additional investments in new or more technologies. All those decisions become easier, not easy, but easier when you have a clear sense of what the business value is and where you expect to get the business value. So one of the biggest measures of success, if not the biggest measure of success, should really be focused on what kind of business value are we getting out of this digital transformation. After all, you're about to spend a lot of time and money and heartache on your transformation. You might as well make sure you come out the other side much better off for it. So I hope this has provided you some guidance on how to define success for digital transformations. For more information and best practices around digital transformations, I encourage you to read our Digital Transformation Report. It's an annual report we publish each year that contains a number of best practices, lessons learned, and independent software reviews and rankings to help you through your digital transformation journey. You can read that report by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you, or you can go to the description fields below. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day. So what I want to do today is learn how to talk. And be sure to stick around. So what I want to do today is, now I forgot what I was going to say.